Hi, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of our Intelligence Insights briefing. I'm Ross Hill, Director of Intelligence for At-Risk's Global Intelligence Team, and I'm joined today by Roman Fisher and Cooper McGill, and we're going to take you through some of the things that I think are interesting or important for the week ahead. So the first one is around the monkeypox outbreak. The World Health Organization held an emergency meeting last Friday to discuss it. It's now spread to at least 18 countries with a total of 193 confirmed or suspected cases. Now, this outbreak is unusual, partly because of the geographic spread. Also, most cases are not actually linked to travel to Africa, and they've actually been frequently discovered through sexual health services, particularly amongst men who have sex with men, but it's actually not known to be specifically sexually transmitted. So this indicates that the outbreak might have actually been going on for a little while, and that some community transmission has occurred. At the moment, there's no real significant concern about the disease. It typically is a mild illness, has a fever and a distinctive kind of bumpy rash. And although there's no specific vaccine for monkeypox, the smallpox vaccine is around 85% effective, and quite a high number of countries keep a decent stockpile of that vaccine if they need it. And although there's no major concern at this time, the head of the WHO did actually last week say that he ranked monkeypox as one of the formidable challenges facing the world alongside the COVID pandemic and the war in Ukraine. And the European head of the WHO said that it's likely to spread more in Europe because of summer gatherings and festivals and those kinds of things. And US President Biden also said that everybody should be concerned. So we are kind of seeing some mixed messages from healthcare around monkeypox. The current guidance is 21 days isolation if you come into contact with the virus, with Belgium actually the only country so far to make that mandatory. Otherwise, it is just guidance. And currently being assessed that this won't actually become a pandemic, although it will probably spread and we will probably see more cases. In terms of risks arising from it, I think we're probably likely to see the conspiracy theorists jump on it because of the potential vaccination links. There was a recent article about the US purchasing some new smallpox vaccines, or a new batch at least. And although they say it's unrelated to the recent monkeypox outbreak, I think conspiracy theorists are likely to make that connection anyway. Also, the virus linked to Africa and its potential link to gay and bisexual men potentially could increase hate crimes in a similar way, probably not exactly the same way, but potentially in a similar way that we saw with the COVID pandemic. And lastly, I think one thing to point out is that the tracking of health issues is going to become increasingly important as part of your kind of travel management program. And then I'll hand you over to Roman Fisher, who's going to talk to us about protests and civil unrest.
Thank you, Ross. Earlier this month, ACLED released its report entitled Far-Right Violence in the American Midterm Elections. If you're not aware of the organization, it's a very interesting read, and I highly recommend everyone go over to ACLED and download that report. The report highlights and warns that far-right groups still represent a significant threat, even though that politically violent events have declined over the year. The report also identifies new patterns and warning signs that should be recognized. Although the total number of militant social movements, or MSMs, are down, they are increasingly active and influential. Groups like the Proud Boys have become more active and more violent. Proud Boy overall activity has risen 15%. Violent demonstrations involving the group have risen 57%, and nearly 25 of all demonstrations involving the Proud Boys turned violent. MSMs are engaging more broadly in right-wing demonstrations. They are generating recruitment opportunities and coalition building opportunities within the wider right-wing network. When MSMs are involved in right-wing demonstrations, the event is 12 times more likely to turn violent or destructive. Demonstrations involving far-right groups are more frequently armed. Armed demonstrations are increasingly focused on government and legislative facilities. Groups like the Three Percenters and the Boogaloo Boys are commonly involved in armed demonstrations. And although their numbers have reduced over the year, they are more often involved in protests at legislative facilities like state capitals. Far-right groups and MSMs are increasing their preparatory actions, such as recruitment events and training exercises. Recruitment has increased significantly in 2021, and training exercises have more than doubled nationwide, driven by several groups. And that's what I have for you, Ross.
Thanks, Raymond. On to our next one around pay and inflation inequality. So CEO pay for the top 100 US companies has reportedly increased by 31% in 2021. The pay ratio between CEOs and employees has also increased kind of year over year for some time and is now around 235 to 254 times that of a normal employee. And a survey by Just Capital found that 81% of Democrats and 71% of Republicans thought CEOs were paid too much. So we're seeing that as a bipartisan issue. This perception of CEOs being paid too much is likely to get worse because of the current high levels of inflation, which is leading to inflation inequality. That basically occurs to those who are generally poorer because they typically spend a larger proportion of their money on essentials such as food and gas. So, relative to people who are well off, the increased inflation hits them much harder. And what we actually also see, both on the extreme left and the extreme right, are kind of fairly strong anti-elite messaging. So issues like CEO pay helps feed their narrative. And so any increased resentment is likely to increase the risk to executives and to companies from both direct action and activism going forward. And then I'm going to pass over to Cooper, who's going to take you through our last one for today.
Thanks, Ross. So today, a quick update on device security and kind of an awareness, trying to bring a continued awareness around that. But recently, over 200 Android applications that were disguised as various utilities, from fitness apps to photo editing, were observed to actually be distributing a spyware called Face Stealer. Really, the way Face Stealer works, it was first developed specifically to pull Facebook login credentials. However, that being said, just with the way it works, it's able to also pull other credentials and various pieces of personal information off of a target's phone. These sort of fraudulent and misleading applications are a pretty persistent cybersecurity risk, particularly when it comes to Android applications. There is, an additional recent analysis that came out from Norton and Boston University, in which they did a pretty widespread study of all of these, potentially harmful applications, with some pretty interesting conclusions. One being just that the issue is pretty pervasive. These 200 applications, this is a pretty small set specifically utilizing this spyware. but that's just one small piece of the puzzle, so to speak. There are various other pieces of spyware that are utilized, lots of applications that are yet to be released on the app stores or are currently still undetected. It's been really looked at more closely when it comes to the amount of time these apps are spending on the app store and on individuals' devices. In some cases 30 plus days before the applications are removed. And current measures apparently are not super effective at immediately going out and preventing these applications from either being uploaded to the app stores or being pulled expeditiously. So with that, obviously, then a lot of the decision making relies on the individual and on the consumer, ensuring that applications that are not from developers that are completely trusted are not being downloaded onto devices. Perhaps performing a review of current applications, oftentimes free applications where it's unclear how the application is generating revenue. Those are particularly high risk. So like those photo sharing applications or a free fitness app. So something good to keep in mind and something to watch as we move forward. There's no question that this issue is not going away, and threat actors will just continue to become sneakier in their methods going forward. But that is all we have for you this week. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you join us again for some additional updates next week. Thanks.